Go, Andy. Go, Andy. Go, Andy. Go, Andy. Go. Yay! What's up, y'all? Hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing good. Hope you guys are blessed. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come to my channel and just to check out this video. I really do appreciate your time, and I appreciate you giving it to me. And I appreciate any support that you've given this channel and you've given me. Thank you. It's February, y'all, so it is Black History Month. And with Black History Month, that means that we are going to be getting specials about Black history, about people that are involved in Black history and people that are Black history. One of these specials that caught my eye and that I noticed, and that is coming up on February 16th, Apple is doing a special about the origin of a Peanuts character. The only Black Peanuts character that I'm aware of, Franklin. When I say that I'm aware of, let me start this off by saying I am not a avid or even a mild Peanuts fan. I remember reading the comics somewhat. I remember watching some of the specials, some of the Charlie Brown cartoons. I think the one that stands out the most to me is Charlie Brown and the Great Pumpkin, or Charlie Brown and the Pumpkin Patch. That's how much I'm unaware of Charlie Brown and the Peanuts. For the longest, I really thought that the comics were, and the idea of this was centered around just Charlie Brown, Snoopy, and Woodstock. I thought that they were the main characters and that was it, and there weren't any other characters. That's my knowledge, and that was my understanding of the Peanuts for quite some time. I've come to see that there's a little bit more than just Charlie Brown and Snoop. There's really more to the Peanuts, and some of that understanding came from what I saw, the reaction to this Franklin special that is coming up. So let me tell you my initial reaction. My initial reaction of seeing the trailer for this special, I found it comical. And one of the reasons that I found it comical is because while I am not an avid Peanuts fan, I've seen things. There's things that have popped up on social media, things that the zeitgeist has put forward, and there's things that I've seen about the Peanuts, and particularly the character of Franklin that has caught my eye and caught my attention. As I was watching this trailer, I was like, all right, are they going to address it? 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 And lo and behold, not only did they address it, but they seemingly revise that moment. And the moment that I'm speaking of is the moment in which I think it may have been the Charlie Brown Thanksgiving, or it was a Charlie Brown special in which Franklin was sitting on the side of the table by himself. And that wasn't the only reason that a lot of people pushed that forward and that became such a big thing on social media. It wasn't just the fact that Franklin was sitting on one side of the table by himself. He had an entire side of the table where nobody was sitting next to him. It didn't get off the vibes that he was sitting at the head of the table. It just gave off the vibes that he was sitting by himself. The other thing is that Franklin didn't even have a proper chair that he was sitting on. He was sitting on a beach chair, a lawn chair, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't a regular chair like the other people got. Because you saw people were sitting in chairs, even though the chairs may have been different colors. Even Snoopy had a chair, but Franklin was sitting in a beach chair. So I think that added to him being seemingly ostracized. Let me also say that this doesn't fall on the creator of the Peanuts, Charles Schulz. This falls on the people that created these specials. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it stands out. And then the fact that they're revising it makes it stand out even more to me. The fact that they're doing this during Black History Month stood out even more to me and made it comical. That was my initial reaction. So then what I did was I went on social media. I wanted to see some of the other people's reactions. Other people's reactions were a lot more positive. They were almost coming from a place of hope. I didn't understand and I did not see that this character Franklin was actually a bigger deal than what he was. And there were a lot of people who seemingly got a sense of joy from the fact that Franklin got a special, whether it was coming out in Black History Month, where they were revising or speaking on or changing that whole him sitting on the side of the table by himself, or anything. People were overjoyed and people were happy to see that Franklin was getting a special. One of the things that really caught my eye as I was looking into this, and it somewhat makes me see it in another light, I still have some thoughts on it, was the inception and the creation of Franklin. Franklin's creation was spurred on by the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. What happened was a woman who was so affected by that wrote into Charles Schulz basically saying, I believe that introducing a black character in your cartoon could really push things forward and really help people get a better understanding of each other, because Peanuts was a family thing. A lot of people read the comic strip. Kids read the comic strip. Parents read the comic strip. It was a big deal. I've even seen people say that the Peanuts comic strip and Charlie Brown was able to describe certain emotions in certain ways that weren't often able to be described. So there was this correspondence between Mrs. Harriet Glickman, the woman who wrote in the letter, a white suburban California mom, and Charles Schultz. And the interesting thing about the letter is she initially wrote the letter in, and Charles Schultz had reservations about trying to create a black character. From what I read and the way in which I read it, maybe somebody can help and give me a little bit more history or a bit more understanding, is Charles Schultz was hesitant because he didn't want to create a patronizing character towards black people, and that would be patronizing to his black friends and black readers. I assume that as he didn't want to create a token. Mrs. Glickman saw the letter and she wrote back to Charles saying, hey, can I show this letter to one of my black friends? She did. Then her black friend sent in a letter. The letter was so interesting to me, the way in which it was worded. It was almost worded in a way where you'd be like, wow. The black person that wrote this letter talked about supernumeraries. And I may be mispronouncing that, but he talked about the problem of Negro supernumeraries. If we were to look at the correspondence between Mrs. Glickman, Charles Schultz, and then the black friend, who they didn't use their full name or their real name, or at least I didn't see it. But if you look at these correspondence and you brought these in today, it's like, let's say they were like, hey, we're releasing these correspondence between Mrs. Glickman, Charles Schultz, and a black person, a black friend of Mrs. Glickman. I think a lot of people would have read these correspondence and read these letters and would have been like, nah. Somebody at the paper came up with this. This is fake news. This isn't real. This is somebody doing something that they're not. This is somebody who is trying to basically push something forward. I think that's the way that a lot of people react. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm not giving people enough benefit of the doubt, but just reading some of these correspondence and reading some of these letters, I think a lot of people would have been like, a lot of people probably would have called it woke. They would have been like, oh, this is woke. This is trying to make the Peanuts woke. They're trying to revise the Peanuts history and make it woke and blase, blase. That's how I believe a lot of people would have seen those letters. Interesting that a white suburban mom was the one who wrote in the letter and gave the suggestion and pushed it forward. Not only did she write the letter, but she didn't stop. She pushed it forward. The backing was that the newspaper that was printing the Peanuts comic strip initially did not want to put out the comic strip featuring Franklin. Charles Schultz gave them pushback on his end, basically stating that if you don't put this out, I'm going to quit. That was his words. A lot of people saw this as Charles Schultz being an ally, being an advocate. But when I looked, I didn't see anything else as far as him advocating for civil rights. Not saying that Franklin wasn't enough and didn't push anything forward, but I didn't see advocation or him being allyship outside of that. If someone knows better, please let me know. If there's other examples of Charles Schultz being an advocate, being an ally towards black people during civil rights, please let me know. I would love to see them. One of the interesting things about Franklin, from what I saw and what I gathered, just reading his bio, is Franklin, to a degree, was a token. And you may disagree, that's perfectly fine, just from what I've read and not being a fan. So please educate me. If there's more, Franklin, to a degree, was a token, but he also elevated above that. There were things about Franklin that made him more than that. Just from reading the small bio that I saw about him. Franklin was religious to a degree. He could quote the Bible. Franklin hung out with Charlie Brown. He liked Charlie Brown in the Peanuts gang, but he thought they were weird. And maybe that is a degree of a black kid who likes hanging around with his white friends, but also doesn't understand some of the things that his white friends do. So he's like, I'm cool with you guys. You are cool, but I don't know about everything you guys do. I can't agree to everything. Franklin also was a swimmer. He was a part of a swim club. He played baseball and hockey, and he had hopes to being in the NHL. Also, Franklin was a dancer. From what I've read and what I've heard, Franklin was the best dancer in the Peanuts gang. Franklin was also musically inclined, in which he could play an instrument. So there was things in which Franklin fit into that bubble of being a token, but there were also things that Franklin did that elevated it. And maybe some of these things are going to be addressed in this new special. The other interesting thing is, for a while, Franklin didn't even have a last name. They're uncertain of what Charles Schulz wanted his last name to be, even though he agreed upon a last name, Armstrong. There was some kind of up in the air stuff about what Franklin's last name was going to be. The difference between Franklin's introduction and the difference between a character named Dave, who is the first black character on Dilbert. I've read a few Dilbert comic strips. I know the author has his issues. People don't really like him to a degree. But I think it's interesting to see their introductions and the way in which they're introduced and kind of the reasoning why they're introduced. I think Scott Adams, I can't say what his true intentions were with introducing Dave. Did see that he introduced Dave basically through a diversity joke. There's a panel where they're introducing Dave and they're saying this is diversity, and Dave says that he identifies as a white man. What was even funnier about the introduction is a lot of the newspapers that printed it in black and white. So you couldn't really even tell Dave was a black dude. You just saw him as a white dude. So the joke was like, maybe to the author of Dilbert's credit, maybe he layered the joke that way, maybe he didn't layer the joke that way. I don't know. I can't say. Charles Schulz introduced the character basically because of the assassination of Martin Luther King. The creator of Dilbert introduced a black character, because he wanted to have a diversity joke and possibly a inclusion and trans joke thrown in his comics. Just interesting. Going back to this revision of Franklin sitting on the side of the table by himself, the fact that it's being done during Black History Month, to me, comes across as pandering. And maybe other people will see it differently. And I'm glad to see that there's people who see it as a character being uplifted, a character being given his dues, a character being given his reparations. But I see it as pandering, because if this happened during Thanksgiving, why couldn't they revise this during the Thanksgiving special? Why couldn't they do it then? Why did it have to be during Black History Month? This could also be me overthinking. I oftentimes, unfortunately, find the humor in a lot of things that shouldn't be as humorous. I'm going to say this. Franklin getting what he deserves, getting his place at the table, is a good thing. It's a good thing. But I also think it is a bit of a metaphor for Black people in general. Black people being satisfied with getting that place at the table. Maybe that's me putting my Dr. Umar hat on, putting my Charleston White hat on, and again, overthinking it, thinking too much into it. Doesn't Franklin deserve his place at the table? Doesn't Franklin deserve a real chair and not a beach chair during a Thanksgiving dinner or during a dinner in general? Does he not? I hope this special is great. I hope a lot of people watch it. And I hope it is a good moment with some of the same genuine intentions that Charles Schulz had at the beginning. That's what I hope. I think that there's things that are kind of, things that people are always going to look at, and we're often not going to see the genuineness and people being genuine in certain degree, because, like I said previously, I think it's very interesting that it was a white suburban California mom who pushed forward the idea of Franklin. And it's all interesting because she mentioned having not just one Black child, but having multiple Black children in this. Characters that were kind of mirror images of the other characters that they already had. Also interesting that the Black person that wrote this note to Charles Schulz on behalf of Mrs. Glickman never gave his name, while Harriet gave her full name. If I'm missing something, if I'm missing part of the history, part of the story, please let me know. I want to know. I want to understand more. People saw this as Charles Schulz being an advocate for civil rights. I cannot downplay what he did. That was his art. And his art, the Peanuts, was an important part of history. It's been an important part of history. It was a cultural moment at that time. So he did something. I can never knock that. I can't knock that. There's always going to be people, and it's there I have to admit, it's in the back of my mind to say, was that it? Was that all that he did. What are your thoughts on the Franklin special being done during Black History Month, them revising the history of Franklin sitting on one side of the table by himself, getting a beach chair while everyone else had regular chairs? Is this a moment of Black people getting their seat at the table? And is this why people are overjoyed, or is there more to it? Because clearly Franklin is an important character to a lot of people's history. He is a piece of Black history. No matter what anybody says, what anybody thinks, Franklin is a part of Black history. So what are your thoughts? Have you seen the trailer? Do you plan to watch the special? It's coming up pretty soon. Hopefully you're having a good Black History Month so far. Hopefully you're learning a lot about Black history. You're getting the knowledge. You're getting understanding. You're getting more than what you usually get. Thank you so much for taking time to check out this video. I truly do appreciate it. I'm really thankful. Thank you for you guys. Hope you guys continue to have a good one. Hope you guys are blessed.